Welcome to Ren Behind the Practice. I'm Sophie Campisi. I'm a holistic business strategist, and I spend a lot of my time in conversation with practitioners, coaches, and healers about the behind the scenes of their businesses. What I started noticing is that some of the most honest, important conversations about building a practice were happening quietly, one-on-one, behind the scenes, and often in isolation. Most practitioners are incredibly skilled at the work that they do with their clients, but very few of us were ever taught or trained in how to build a successful startup business. And suddenly we've been left to figure it out on our own. This podcast exists to bring those conversations forward. The dreams, the uncertainty, the highs and lows, the recalibrations, and the messy middle. My hope is that by normalizing these conversations, we can soften the stigma, feel less alone, and start closing the gaps together. Today's guest is Ralu Atomei. Ralu is a nervous system capacity coach and leadership strategist for women in business who are ready to lead from within and shed the layers of patterns and conditioning that don't serve them anymore. Ralu, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for showing up and having this conversation with me.
Thank you so much for the invite. It's lovely to be here.
Before we look behind the scenes today, can you share a little bit more about the work that you do?
Absolutely. I started the work that I do by getting an ICF certification as a somatic trauma-informed coach. This was the base for me to actually start in trauma work. Although when I started in the coaching world, I said I would do anything but trauma, but here I am. I ended up doing trauma. At the moment, I'm working with women in business. My work has evolved over the past few years because I've noticed different patterns. And I've noticed that women, as we know, they're an underserved community. But when it comes to leadership, that's when most of the patterns are actually triggered. The same way as in motherhood, the same way as opening a business. That's when we see those patterns of imposter syndrome, of perfectionism, of people pleasing. And they are even more amplified when everything happens at the same time. Motherhood, business, leadership. And we're trying to run our businesses based on a leadership blueprint that was never actually written for us, unfortunately. We're trying with hustle culture. We're trying to be louder, to do more, to be more, always more, when actually stepping into that feminine leadership and what I call capacity leadership means actually building a business and becoming a leader from a grounded place, a place of nervous system regulation, a place of building nervous system capacity. So how much decision-making, how much stress you can actually take before you actually break down, before going through those circles of burnout, before doing more and then collapsing after.
How long have you been doing this specific type of work?
I've been a coach now for about 2 years. I had a BA in sociology, in psychology, and educational sciences. Unfortunately, my own trauma at that point meant I did not feel ready and I was not encouraged to actually become a therapist. So I started down the path of corporate. I started as a recruiter, went through talent acquisition, HR management. I ended up in IT and product management. So I've done my own share of leadership in the corporate world. And I've worked with leaders worldwide, global leaders to the highest level. So the work that I'm doing now with the leadership part actually encompasses the work that I've been doing in the corporate world for 17 years. Plus my coaching knowledge and the trauma knowledge that the work that I've been doing with women over the past 2 years. So it's a mix of everything.
Was there something specific that had you take the leap or take the action to actually get into the capacity? Now it's as a coach, whereas before it would have been maybe as a traditional therapist.
The things that I talk about a lot at the moment, and first of all, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in this. Like I could look back at my life and realize why I had to go through every single stage and how every lesson that you learn, it's actually a brick. You build upon something else. So I don't think the work that I'm doing is random. I don't think the work that I'm doing would have been better if I've gone down the route of therapy. And actually, what I'm seeing with the work that I'm doing right now is the fact that it's so much deeper than the therapy work because it's about building safety in the body. And as our listeners probably have heard other times as well, there's a constant exchange of messages between the brain and the body. Only 20% of the messages go from the brain to the body, and 80% of the messages go from the body to the brain. So we cannot ignore those messages. And I was actually having this conversation in a Facebook group just before our call, saying that if your nervous system doesn't feel safe, no amount of mindset work is actually going to ever regulate it. You don't pick your way out of trauma. So it's very important to discuss about this missing piece. I know in the online world, especially, the idea of mindset work has been normalized. My work is about normalizing nervous system work as well and destigmatizing the word trauma, because that's when I'm seeing people kind of close down. The reaction is, oh, but I don't have trauma. Like, I don't need this kind of work. Not even realizing that trauma doesn't necessarily need to be something devastating, catastrophic. It can actually be emotional neglect. It can actually be bullying. It can actually be things that are seemingly minor in the eyes of anyone else, but because they happened as a pattern over prolonged period of time, they impact you the same way as if you would have lost a loved one or you would have been in a major car crash or something like that.
When you look ahead to the next 6 to 12 months, what goals do you have for your work and for your practice?
My main goal, and with all the work that I'm doing, is to actually normalizing this nervous system work and trauma work and get it to be for women in business on the same line with business strategy. So when we start a business, we are told work with a business coach, work with a business strategist. However, if you don't do the inner work before that, the strategy is still going to fail because you're not showing yourself, you're not putting yourself out there because, I don't know, someone at one point told you that you're not good enough for that, or you think no one wants to listen to what you have to offer or what you have to say. So all those patterns are going to impact the way you build your business. Unless you do the mindset work first, the investment in a business strategy is not going to pay off, unfortunately.
Do you feel like in focusing on the education piece, it will be a bridge to people understanding the importance of the work that you do, and then ultimately get to a place where it can translate into more connections for you and client connections and real work with real people?
I do have two areas of my business. So I focus on the education and awareness piece and speaking on stages. So that's still going to be a major part of my business. On the other hand, I obviously work firsthand, both in one-to-one and into one-to-one format, but also in a group format with women in business on actually identifying those patterns, healing that trauma, building that nervous system capacity and leadership strategies. A happy life essentially is not only about the business, it's about being able to create that sustainable happiness without always waiting for the other shoe to drop. We've been conditioned for so long to think that it's normal to have everything going sideways. It's normal to be in that level of chronic stress and burnout where everything just happens to you, nothing happens for you, if that makes sense. And I think at this point, women don't necessarily know how to be happy. They feel guilty. They feel guilty when they put themselves first. They feel guilty when they don't spend that much time with their children because they have to build a business. Women are expected to work as if they don't have a family and have a family as if they don't work. So multiple full-time jobs at the same time. And obviously, having those expectations put upon you means that essentially it's going to lead to physical illness. And that's what I'm trying to do in the work that I'm doing, both with my clients, but in the awareness work as well, to make them understand that unless you tend to your body, unless you regulate your nervous system, unless you prioritize yourself, it's going to, your body is essentially going to force you to rest. It's going to force you to slow down through physical illness. And that's when usually people are starting to wake up and maybe that wasn't the best idea.
The clients that you have now in your one-on-one work or in your group work, where have you connected with them?
My the main my main platform is Facebook. So I work online at the moment. Even the sessions I have are mostly online. However, I go to a lot of networking events. I speak at different networking events. I'm going to be in the mental health panel for a conference in July. So I have a few other events lined up in the next few months by the end of this year. And this is the way I actually connect with most of my clients. They come from networking and from the work that I do online.
And do most of those women come to you for a specific aspect of the work that you do?
The main thing is the trauma. I am known now in the online world as the trauma expert because I am very vocal about this. And I've been working for the past few years, as I mentioned, on destigmatizing the word trauma. So usually when they come to me, they say, I know I have a lot of trauma. I do need support to actually work with it. I work with them on the awareness of trauma. We don't work on the trauma per se, and we don't work as in talk about that trauma all the time because there's always obviously the risk of re-traumatizing. So we work in the present with the awareness of the trauma on the patterns that show up for them right now and with building the future to their ideal life. So this is kind of the pattern that we're following.
Yeah, it's so valuable to have something that people are aware of. One of the biggest hurdles that people in our industry face is we become so qualified, we become so good at the work that we do. We go so deep into the work, and then it can be really hard for us to connect back to where people are right in their beginning and what their reality is. And so that's part of why I asked, and why I ask a lot of people, because I'm always curious, what are people coming to you or others for? For you saying trauma, it doesn't surprise me, because even if you know that there are 100 nuances to the work that you do and you're delivering a dream outcome or result for people, what is it that's going to pique their nervous systems and pique their attention about the work that you do? And trauma is one of those things that, even if your work is so much more nuanced than just trauma, that's still something that they can recognize and acknowledge and be aware of. And it gives you a connection point to people that is valuable, and it helps people find you and helps you find them, even if you know that once they're, air quotes, in the door, your work is going to touch on so many other things. You are seeing in real time that trauma is a connection point and a doorway, if you will, for people to you and to the work that you do, which is a really valuable thing.
Absolutely. And luckily, we're now seeing so much more awareness on trauma. So we've gone past that stage where everything was a mindset issue. And we're understanding that When we say trauma, we're not referring to the event itself, but we're referring to how that event or the series of events has actually impacted us and the way we relate to ourselves, we relate to the world and everyone around us. So having that awareness means finally understanding that there's an option for you out there. You can be happy. You can live a calm and peaceful life. You have to do the work. I never promise them that it's going to be easy work. It's not. However, the grass is definitely greener on the other side. So I've seen this with myself. I've gone through my own healing journey before starting this work, and I've seen it with my clients after months of working together. And even after a couple of sessions, I had clients saying, I've been in therapy for years. However, after 2 sessions of working with my body, of understanding the cues that my body is and the signals that my body is sending, and just regulating in the moment, everything has been a game changer. As you mentioned, while trauma brings them into my world, the work that I do touches on so much more and so many other modalities. I work with not only with somatic trauma informed coaching, I work with NLP, I work with psychology, and I am a breathwork certified practitioner as well, EFT tapping practitioner. So there's so much more to everything that is custom work for the clients that I work with. There's no cookie cutter recipe. There's no one size fits all version. Everything is custom work when you work with people's backgrounds and people's trauma.
Has there anything on this journey of, you're a couple years into your coaching practice, which is also entrepreneurship and solopreneurship, is there anything that has felt heavier or harder than you thought it would?
I think you touched on it at one point, I think maybe in your intro, the idea of doing it by yourself. We kind of go from, especially if you're coming from the corporate worlds, I want to do it by myself. I don't want to have the. When you go into your business, especially if you still go in it with that employee mindset or employee energy, and direction doesn't go from anywhere, it can be both frustrating and it can feel very lonely. So the moment I actually discovered the world of networking, that's when everything changed for me. The fact that women have been able to build amazing each other, to help each other grow. This is the kind of world that I want to be a part of, that I want to help grow, especially as I have a daughter. So the reason why I've gone into this work is the fact that I wholeheartedly believe that together we can build a much better world, a much more compassionate world, and leave a better world for our children and the generations to come.
Totally. This is something that comes up so much from people who especially have a strong corporate background and have been successful in corporate, and then they shift. They're ready to do it on their own. They shift into entrepreneurship, and often it catches people off guard that they are two completely different ball games. And it's like bringing golf gear to a soccer match or vice versa. So, like, athleticism could be fundamental. So, if you were someone who could excel or did excel in the corporate setting and leadership and all of the stuff that it took to thrive in that environment, maybe some of those fundamental characteristics that are who you are will carry over the same way that if you're athletic, you will be athletic in golf or soccer. But when it comes to actually what you're doing day in and day out, it's two completely different things. They're incomparable. I have so many conversations with people that are having a hard time mindset wise, emotionally, mentally, thinking I was so good. I was at the top in my job in this company, I was the top salesperson in all of the country and all of the region. And then I started my practice and I can't figure out how to get clients, or I can't figure out how to get it to grow. And, what is missing? And it's like, you can't compare it. You started a startup that doesn't have product market fit, right? Or you don't have that offer market match. You haven't found that sweet spot yet in laying those startup foundations to then go into growth, which is all the skills you were using in your corporate job. You can't compare it. So you're not doing anything wrong. It's just there's not enough conversation around these things, that it's so different. Or like you were just talking about, it's very lonely. You all of a sudden are making every single decision, every single one. And often you don't know if it's the right decision to make or not. And that gets heavy. That for me was the thing that I finally hit burnout from. Was I was so tired of making decisions about things that I was very aware I did not have the expertise in. I didn't know. I'll make the decision. I'll put a stake in the ground. I'll make the decision. I will even invest my time, money, resources, and energy into this. I don't know if it's the right decision to make. And that started driving me crazy. So yeah, I mean, what you're saying, this is it's such a breakdown, especially for those of us who have thrived in other environments. And then we shift into entrepreneurship and all these things, it's not going as well. It's very lonely. It's all this stuff. And it's like, you can't hardly compare the two.
I think entrepreneurship has been very glamorized over the last 6 years. I think it started mainly in the COVID and post-COVID era when everyone shifted online. And all of a sudden, we started seeing those vocal entrepreneurs doing 6 figures, 7 figures, facing overnight transformations. Buy my course and you're going to make 6 figures in 3 days, and so on and so forth. And when you go into building your own business, all of a sudden you're not the expert, or you're not just the expert, but you're the videographer, you're the graphic designer, you're the finance manager, you're the COO, CEO, CFO, etc., etc. And you do not have the skills for those ones. So being the expert is not enough. Being the expert that has no money to outsource the jobs that they don't have the skills for is even more frustrating. So being compassionate to yourself, understanding those patterns, and building at your own pace. So this is part of what I'm doing this is where my leadership work comes into place, and what I'm doing with this capacity leadership framework that I'm working with. It's in building intentionally and building in alignment. It's not only what's the business that I want to build and what's the goal I want to get to. It's who am I as a person? What are my values? What do I believe in? How can I build that business to be an extension of my person? So everything feels so natural, so organic to me, that is not a chore. It's actually something that I'm passionate about. It's something that sparks joy, and something that, as mentioned, I'm building intentionally. And it's not just because some business guru promised me that I'm going to make 6 figures very easy in the next 30 days.
I love that you said entrepreneurship has been so glamorized. Yes, like that is so true. And like you said, those COVID times, and I've heard someone else recently use the phrase, I think of someone on this podcast actually. She was like, I'm so sick of DIYing, because we also entered this era of DIY. Everything can be DIY. You can just do it yourself. And yeah, I'm remembering it was Kate, and she was like, I'm so sick of that DIY glamorization as well. And like we've come kind of out of balance. And then we have the whole social media thing where all of the messaging is you can do it on your own and do it on your own. And you should know how to do it. And business building is so easy and you can do it in 1 month. You'll get these results. And I've heard someone also recently being like, I'm so sick of hearing people say how much they make a month or guarantee how much they could get you to make in a month and overnight. It's not true. And someone else on this podcast was saying she's even heard of these business coaches, air quotes, having external people transfer money into their account so that they can show that they had X number coming in that month. And I was just like, my jaw was on the floor, but like, that's the reality. It's become so glamorized. It's gotten lost because the reality is it is so difficult. It is so hard. And I think one of the things that is a shadow side or the outcome of this glamorized DIY, you can do it, you should be able to do it. Look at the numbers I'm making, and I'm helping all these people make these crazy high numbers. Is people think it's not accurate, it's inauthentic. And then people think that it's just them. Oh no, it just must be me because I can't figure it out. And it's not true.
Exactly that. And it's what I tell my clients all the time. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the reason why I was saying in the beginning of our conversation, the fact that all your trauma patterns and all your nervous system responses are amplified when you go into the business. Because whether you think you're not good enough, whether you think you're not worthy, you're going to show up that way. Everything shows in the way you build your business, in the way you show up for your business. Whether you have a people pleasing pattern and you undercharge or over deliver to the point of burnout, whether you have a comparing part of yourself where you go online thinking, I'm going to do market research, and all of a sudden you found yourself doom scrolling for 2 hours and being on the floor because everybody makes 6 figures, 7 figures, and you've barely made $300 this month or something like that. If you have an imposter syndrome part, you're going to do so many qualifications, but never actually feel ready to put your offer out there, to actually work with real clients. If you have a perfectionism pattern, then that means that you stay up all night because that presentation that you have to do in the morning needs to be perfect, needs to be just right. And you don't think that navy blue is going to be the right color and you need pink and so on and so forth. So you overthink everything, you overthink all these decisions. And in the end, you just end up exhausted and you're going to think, this is just not for me. Maybe I'm just not made for business. Maybe I should go and find myself a job. And all of these are trauma responses. All of this is your nervous system trying to find safety. Your nervous system doesn't make the difference between you speaking on a stage and being chased by a lion. It's going to show up the same way, and you're going to feel the same anxiety and going to fight or flight. This is the reason why I'm saying entrepreneurship is so glamorized. And you're right about DIY as well. I've been in that DIY era as well. But you end up just doing everything halfway through and then still think that you're not good enough to do it because you're not, at that point, you're not skilled enough to do everything that a professional would do. The work that I'm doing is so, so important when you want to build a sustainable business. If you want to just show up for a quick buck, that's fine. You can listen to everyone else, not do the inner work. If you want to build something sustainable that doesn't affect your physical health, your mental health, that doesn't ask you to choose between your family, your well being, and your ambition, that doesn't require you to work 24/7, because, as you know, there was that joke. I'm glad that I gave up on my 9 to 5 so I can work 24/7 in my business. I feel so much more relaxed now. Then you need to do the inner work before you need to do the business strategy.
Absolutely. This has actually been coming up so much recently in these conversations about how we, especially those of us who are holistic practitioners, coaches, healers, We are the way showers. We can't let the old way of doing things, which is forgetting about our health, our well being, our relationships, our sleep, we can't do it. We have to be leading by example. And so something has to give when it comes to how we approach building businesses and how we approach running our practices and even the types of businesses that we are building to run and coming out of the falseness or the myths about what a coaching practice should look like or how much money you should be making every month and coming out of those conditioning of all of this online 100K a months and all this of no, sustainability is so much more than just financial. It's energetic, it's our nervous systems, it's our health, it's our well-being, it's our families, it's all of our areas of life. What the businesses look like that we're building, it's not a one size fits all. Like it's so important to come out of all of this stuff because we can't be throwing our own well-being out in order to run these businesses to then show people how to be living well lives.
It is, but unfortunately, it's so much harder. The reality is, it's not easy, it's not fast, it's going to be very hard, and you're going to have to pivot so many times. And I had to go through it as well. I had to pivot a few times because I've allowed myself to evolve. And I tell this to my clients as well. Allow yourself to change your mind. Allow yourself to go towards those decisions that make you feel in alignment with where you want to be and who you really are. Instead of following the latest trend, instead of following whoever is the loudest, because usually they, it's Instagrammable, but it's not real life. It's not the truth. And yes, you exactly the same background, have exactly the same team that's working for them, and so on and so forth. And I've seen this so many times, especially the past few months, although I feel like we're kind of shifting the energy there. But I've seen a lot of messages online based on the idea of people nowadays don't know how you need to work so hard and build a sustainable business. That's not realistic. And it's usually men who say these things because they don't have to necessarily do the childcare, they don't have to run the house. They always have someone behind them who's actually doing the rest of the work. And unfortunately, the patriarchy has conditioned women to think that they need to stay small, they need to stay humble, they need to think earlier that not everything is about finances. However, not everything is about helping people either. You help people, but you also need to pay your bills. And I see a lot of women, especially on a people pleasing pattern background, going into business and thinking, oh, but I'm here to actually help people. I don't want to charge. And I've been told that. I've been told that by someone in my family, actually. Oh, but you can't charge them. Like, you need to help people. So, unfortunately, these things come up a lot more. And I was mentioning that I'm feeling a shift, and I'm actually feeling a shift. Working and being present in so much women community, I feel like we're actually moving past the idea that we have to do everything fast, we have to do more, we have to be more. And women are starting to actually come back to themselves. I have to be in order to be able to do this. It's making me so happy, to be honest, because we need to do it together and we need to build ourselves up. It's the only way we're going to be able to, I know I keep saying this, but to change the world. Everyone knows that we need that right now with the state of the world.
What's the cost if you're not able to get your work and your practice to where you know that it's headed or the vision that you have for it? What's the cost to you, to others, to the world?
I think the cost is the way I see it, the cost is a lot higher for someone who misses this kind of work and someone who misses this kind of awareness. On my end, I've stepped into my leadership, I stepped into my power, and I feel a lot more confident in pivoting emotionally. While the cost, obviously, emotional, there's always going to be a cost, and financial, obviously, but I can always rebuild. However, the help that I give to my clients is going to potentially be life changing. I've seen women, I can't even explain it in shell, from staying small, from staying humble to literally reclaiming their voice and speak in front of a crowd and speak on stages and say the things that they believe in. And this is why I probably still go out there, even if things flop at one point, because things are always going to flop. Like, until, you know how they say that you have to kiss a lot, to still do a lot of trial and error until you find the thing that's actually working for you. And I do believe that everything happens for a reason. So you have to go through those lessons to actually get to where you need to be and how you need to do things.
Ralu, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation. And for those of you who are listening, if any part of this resonated, you're in the right place, please reach out. I want to hear from you. And if you want to reach Ralu directly, the links to her website and her Facebook profile are in the show notes. Thank you again, Ralu. And to everyone else, thank you for listening. And we'll see you for the next episode of Ren Behind the Practice.